¿A dónde está papi? ¿A dónde está papi? ¿A dónde está papi?
Herschel Walker, running.
¿A dónde está papi? ¿A dónde está papi? ¿A dónde está papi?
Welcome to the Monday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Monday. It is the beginning of yet another week. We do have quite a bit of things to go through.
I was on a family trip to England recently.
There we go. Okay. Sorry, I still got a few things to put up here. Cool. How's everybody doing? Welcome, Cosmic Seeking. Happy Monday night. It is indeed Monday, and it is indeed evening. Let me just get some stuff out of the way. I don't know what's going on over there. As of right now, the death toll of Hurricane Ian is just surpassed 100, I believe. So the situation is pretty bad. The co-host actually went over to get her family out of there. And it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. It's probably going to take years before those communities get rebuilt. Florida is pretty well. The west coast of Florida is pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I don't know how bad South Carolina is. I don't really know. There was some flooding in South Carolina, but Florida is just it's bad. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I mean, you could just watch some of like the reporting and whatnot. Like it's bad. It's pretty freaking bad. It's beyond human capability to stop what Ian did to Florida. Well, there are things that can be done to minimize the damage of storms. There was a specific community in the West Coast that was in the direct center of Ian that had resiliency built into it. It took into account flooding, massive flooding. It took into account power loss and all that. They built all their internet lines. They built all their power lines underground. They raised it up as high as possible. They designed their streets to actually flood instead of the homes. The entire community of like I think 2,000 people have solar panels. The entire community is solar powered, and out of all like the surrounding areas, they were the only ones that had power and internet and minimal damage. All of those people were completely fine, which goes to show that if you actually plan ahead and you actually design your communities taking into account like the climate crisis, then you have more of a chance. How did they stop the storm surge? They built their cities, not their cities, sorry. They built their roads to flood. They designed their roads to flood instead of the actual houses. So the way they had their whole setup, they were able to kind of buoy more of the flooding than normal. It just goes to show that if you actually plan ahead and have climate resiliency built into it, or have the climate crisis take the climate crisis into consideration, you have more of a chance. You have more of a chance. It's not guaranteed, obviously. You can't really contend with Mother Nature, but there are certain things that you can do that will give you more of a chance. I think what you mean is DIKES, to stop the storm surge. No, I just told you they designed their roads so that their roads all get flooded like canals instead of the actual houses. Is hurricane? Oh yeah, it's been over, Alio. Yeah, it's been over. The destruction, however, is not. And over the last couple of days, all this overflow of rivers are starting to create a massive problem there too. The waters are rising. Yeah, there you go. But you don't need to. They designed their roads to do that. Roads are better than houses, maybe not for cars and wheelchairs. What? No. If you're out in, why would you be out in the storm? Why would you be out in a hurricane? Yeah, the roads are designed to flood so that the houses don't, so you'll be safe. It makes sense that the storm moved north, dumping the Gulf rains down, then the rivers up north filled and flowed back down. Yep. How's it going? Spread it forward. Here, I'll show you what I'm talking about, folks. I'll show you. This is what climate resiliency planning looks like. This 100% solar community endured Hurricane Ian with no loss of power and minimal damage. Anthony Garand moved away from Fort Myers 3 years ago in large part because of the hurricane risk. He has lived in Southwood, Florida for nearly 19 years, has experienced Hurricanes Charlie in 2004 and Irma in 2017, and saw what stronger storms could do to the coast. Grande told CNN that he wanted to find a new home where developers prioritize climate resilience in a state that is increasingly vulnerable to record-breaking storm surge, catastrophic wind, and historic rainfall. What he found was Babcock Ranch, only 12 miles northeast of Fort Myers, yet seemingly light years ahead. Babcock Ranch calls itself America's first solar-powered town. Its nearby solar array, made up of 700,000 individual panels, generates more electricity than the 2,000 home neighborhood uses. in a state where most electricity is generated by burning natural gas, a planet-warming fossil fuel. The street in this meticulously planned neighborhood were designed to flood so that the houses don't. Native landscaping, along with roads, help control the stormwater. Power and internet lines are buried to avoid wind damage. This is all in addition to being built to Florida's robust building codes. Some residents like Granda installed more solar panels on the roof and added battery systems as an extra layer of protection from power outages. Based, many drive electric vehicles, taking full advantage of the solar energy in the Sunshine State. Climate resiliency was built into the fabric of this town with stronger storms in mind. So when Hurricane Ian came barreling down towards southwest Florida this week, it was a true test for the community. The storm obliterated the nearby Fort Myers and Naples area with record-breaking surge and winds over 100 miles per hour. I think the strongest winds were at 155 miles per hour, just shy of a Category 5. So it was pretty bad. Not only that, like, these aren't your grandpappy storms. People thought, like, back in the 90s, like, Andrew was such a massive, like, destructive storm, but nothing in comparison with the storms that are happening now. Not worlds apart. But the light stayed on. It knocked out power to more than 2.6 million customers in the state, including 90% of Charlotte County. But the light stayed on at Babcock Ranch. It certainly exceeded our expectations of a major hurricane. The storms uprooted trees and tore shingles from roofs, but other than that, Grande said that there's no major damage. Its residents say that Babcock Ranch is proof that an eco-conscious and solar-powered town can withstand the wrath of a nearly Category 5 storm. We have the proof of the case now because the hurricane came right over us, said Nancy, sharpening a 60-year-old Babcock Ranch resident. We have water, electricity, and internet. We may be the only people in Southwest Florida who are that fortunate. Or who have communities with climate resiliency built into them. Grande said Ian came through Southwest Florida like a freight train, but he wasn't afraid that he could lose everything in a storm like he was when he lived in Fort Myers. Mind you, this wasn't like that far away from Fort Myers. We're very blessed and fortunate not to be experiencing what they're experiencing now in Sanibel Island, Fort Myers Beach. In the times that we're living in right now with climate change, the beach is not the place to live or have a business. Yeah, unfortunately, there's places that are literally just gone. Literally just gone there. It's really, really bad. Sid Kitson, a former professional football player for the Green Bay Packers and Dallas Cowboys, is the mastermind behind the Babcock Ranch. Kitson envisioned it to be an eco-conscious and innovative neighborhood that is safe and resilient from storms like Ian. The ranch broke ground in 2015 with the construction of the solar array, which was built and is run by Florida Power and Light. Hey, stop it. And its first residents moved into the town in 2018. Since then, the array has doubled in size and thousands of people have made Babcock their home. It's a great case study to show that it can be done right if you build it in the right place and you do it the right way. Throughout all this, there's just so many people saying it worked and this was the vision, this is the reason we moved here. Perhaps the highest endorsement for the city is that it's now a refuge for some of Ian's hardest hit victims. The state opened Babcock Neighborhood School as an official shelter, even though it didn't have the mandated generator. The solar array kept the lights on. Some of Sharpening's friends who lives on Sanibel Island, which is now cut off from the mainland after Ian's devastating storm surge severed the causeway. Yeah, like there are several bridges or roads that connect these like islands that are just gone. Came to a shelter at a friend's house. It will be a while before they can go back. Yeah, a lot of these places, like this community is going to take years, for all these things to be rebuilt. They're going to be renting a place over here for a while until they figure out what's going to happen. I joke that they may be the only people in Southwest Florida whose property value just increased. Maybe. Even Kitson chose to ride out the storm in Babcock to see how the community would fare in the hurricane. Kitson declined CNN's requests for interview. Halstead is focused on helping the neighboring communities rebuild. He was there during the storm. Where else would I be? We built it to be resilient, and as much as you plan, you think you've done it right. You don't know until you put it to the test. As utilities scramble to restore power across the state, Babcock residents say September storms showed that America's energy infrastructure is not well equipped to handle worsening extreme weather events. Hurricane Fiona ravaged Puerto Rico's power grid when it made landfall there on September 18th, and now Ian has left millions of people in the dark in Florida. Yeah, and it could be weeks, maybe months, before these folks get power and basic services restored. It's not what it was 20 to 25 years ago. The storms are getting bigger and bigger, and it's no surprise because the warnings have all been there. True. Like I said, these aren't your grandpappy's storms. These aren't your grandpappy's storms. My point is... if you... this is a perfect example of what climate resiliency could look like. This is a perfect example of how you can make this work. That's what I'm saying. Have you seen the Dr. Oz Dead Dog story? This guy has got to go. No. Can you post me a link? Send me a link. I have no idea what that means. What that's about. Jesus freaking Christ. That is horrifying. Wow. This is disgusting. We'll take a look at this in a second. If you want to see the link before I get to it, this is it here. Absolutely disgusting. All right, we're going to run through some of these headlines and see how quickly we can get to this. If Fetterman doesn't steamroll this guy, then I don't know what's wrong with people there. You want a list? If someone like Dr. Oz wins, oh my goodness. Supreme Court declines to hear MyPillow CEO appeal in defamation case. The Supreme Court on Monday declined to hear an appeal from Mike Pillow as he fights a defamation suit from voting machine company he said rigged the 2020 presidential election against former President Trump. Dominion Voting Systems, which manufactures machines used to administer elections in several states, sued the Trump supporter of his claims, and the Supreme Court's decision not to hear the case means a defamation lawsuit can move forward. Nice. The $1.3 billion lawsuit alleges that Lindell harmed the manufacturer's brand by promoting claims that skewed the election towards now President Biden. Lindell is a prominent Trump ally and has been steadfast in his unsubstantiated assertions that the 2020 election was stolen from the former president. Ooh. Okay. Dominion is also pursuing legal action against former Trump lawyer Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani for their false claims that the 2020 election was stolen, but the pair were not involved in Lindell's appeal to the Supreme Court. Lindell's request to dismiss the case was declined by a lower court in August, and the Supreme Court's decision not to hear this appeal means the lawsuit can proceed. It's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time. Alright, folks, give me like 2 seconds. I need to blow my nose. Sheesh. Okay. Whew. Sorry about that. Supreme Court turns away challenge to U.S. vaccine rule for health workers. The Supreme Court on Monday declined to hear a challenge by Missouri and 9 other states, mostly Republican-led, to President Biden's vaccine mandate for workers in healthcare facilities that receive federal funds. The justices turned away an appeal by the states after a lower court declined to immediately consider their claims that vaccine rules violate federal administrative law and tramples over the powers reserved for the states under the U.S. Constitution. The Democratic President's administration issued this rule in November of 2021. The Supreme Court ruled in a 5-4 decision in January to let Biden enforce healthcare worker mandates while litigation on its legal merits continued down in the lower courts. Justices all the same time decided 6-3 to halt this administration rule requiring vaccines or weekly COVID tests for employees at businesses with at least 100 employees. The Biden's administration had argued that the two mandates would save lives and strengthen the U.S. economy by increasing the number of vaccinated Americans. The United States leads the world in COVID deaths, reporting more than 1 million since the pandemic took hold in early 2020. The federal healthcare worker rule requires vaccination for about 10.3 million workers at 76,000 healthcare facilities, including hospitals, nursing homes, that accept money from the Medicare and Medicaid government health insurance program for elderly, disabled, and low-income Americans. The Supreme Court in January concluded with that Biden's regulation fit within the power Congress conferred on the federal government to impose conditions on Medicaid and Medicare funds. It decided that ensuring that medical providers take steps to avoid transmitting a dangerous virus to their patients is consistent with the fundamental principle of putting the medical profession first, do no harm. Yeah, no shit. No shit. Missouri sued along Nebraska, Alaska, Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, New Hampshire, North Dakota, and South Dakota, and Wyoming, winning an injunction against the requirement in those states. The mandate had also been blocked in 15 other states, including Arizona and Texas, following litigation there. After the justices in January stayed preliminary injunctions issued by lower courts against the rule, including in Missouri's lawsuit, the state asked St. Louis-based U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals to expedite hearing the merits of the case. In April, the 8th Circuit instead sent the case back to federal judge to proceed to a trial. Missouri then appealed to the Supreme Court, contending that the mandate violates federal administrative law and tramples over the powers reserved to the states under the U.S. Constitution. We'll see where that goes. I mean, like, I don't understand what the problem would be for mandatory, like, vaccinations when it comes to, like, healthcare professionals. That should kind of be, like, obvious, right? Like, out of all the things that you could think of, like, that's the one that makes, like, the most sense. The U.S. Supreme Court will begin a new term with more contentious cases on its docket. After a tumultuous turn that ended in June, the U.S. Supreme Court returns on Monday to officially open a second potentially stormy term. It may be hard to beat last term's sustained a dramatic turn to the right, which included the most prominently overturning over a half-century of precedents that had guaranteed women the right to terminate most pregnancies. But the court may well rock the boat again, despite the fact that it finds approval ratings plummeting to historic lows. Like, well, approval ratings aren't reasons to make decisions one way or another. It's a verdict on the Supreme Court. That's it. So much so that Chief Justice Roberts sought to defend the court's legitimacy while speaking to a conference of judges and lawyers in Colorado. Quote, decisions have always been the subject of intense criticism, and that is entirely appropriate, but lately the criticism is phrased in the form of, in terms of the legitimacy of the court, he said, and that, he said, is a mistake. Well, unfortunately, they have made it, or they have created a situation where, yeah, your integrity and by extension, your legitimacy is being questioned. When you've got people, you've got justices, colleagues, who have lied in their confirmation hearings, that tends to lose trust. It turns out people don't like liars. I'm just saying. It turns out people don't like liars. It's the job of the court to say what the law is, he said, and that role doesn't change simply because people disagree with the opinion or this opinion or that opinion. After all, you don't want the political branches telling you what the law is, and you don't want public opinion to be the guide of what the appropriate decision is. Wait, by definition, what do you mean by a, quote, political branches? All of them are political. All of them, by definition, are political. When it comes to government, and I presume what he's talking about is the three branches of government. They're all political. This idea that the Supreme Court is somehow apolitical is a joke. The Supreme Court is not apolitical in any way, shape, or form. But Justice Kagan pointedly disagreed with some of what Roberts was saying, noting in 3 separate appearances that in her view, a court's legitimacy has to be earned. True. Precedent should only be reversed in the rarest of cases, she said. Precedent, she said, is the foundation of stone law. A doctrine of stability that tells people they can rely on the law, but if all of a sudden everything is up for grabs, all of a sudden very fundamental principles of law are being overthrown, then people have a right to say, you know what, what's going on there? That doesn't seem very law-like, because it isn't. And she's right here. She's right in this scenario. She is right. Yes, the Supreme Court is political. That is correct. Or as she put it at Sal Virginia University in Rhode Island, the court shouldn't be just wandering around, just inserting itself into every hot-button issue in America, and it especially shouldn't be doing that in a way that reflects one set of political views or another, because the court is political. What are you talking about? Like, by definition, right? Excuse me. By definition, the court is political, right? Who appoints the justices? Who appoints the justices of the Supreme Court, right? The president. The president and the president belongs, generally speaking, I mean, it's hard to find a president who doesn't join a political party, but for the most part, the overwhelming amount of presidents are of a political party. So by definition, yes, the Supreme Court is political. Who has to approve these justices, or who has to confirm these justices? That's right, the other two branches of government, which also, and this is true, are political. Exactly, Bipedal Meatbag. Exactly. Exactly. Kagan can see probably better than the rest of us that there may be, well, dramatic right turns again on this year on everything from affirmative action to voting rights, clean water regulations, and an asserted First Amendment right to discriminate against same-sex couples in public accommodations. Indeed, the conservative court's appetite for hot-button issues appears unabated, right? Because, well, they're political. That's why they're there. Like, do you think that a Republican president isn't going to select the judge that would further Republican interests in the same way that you don't think that a Democratic president won't select a judge, or a justice, I should say, that won't advance or won't protect Democratic interests or agendas? Of course. It's this, like, by definition, the Supreme Court is political. Like, this idea, this attempted charade that the Supreme Court is somehow, like, neutral, it's just laughable. It's just laughable. The question of precedent will rear its head again in this term, a case challenging this by the way, oh wait, hold on. No, I'm thinking of a different I'm thinking of a different ruling here. The question of precedent will rear its head again this term in a case challenging the affirmative action programs at Harvard and University of North Carolina. For more than 4 decades, the court has ruled that race may be one of the many factors considered in college admissions, but the issue is back this term before a very different court. The starkest question is whether the previous decision were grievously wrong. The same rationale the court majority used last term in overturning Roe versus Wade. In the affirmative action case, the challenger's case was heavily on the Supreme Court's 1954 decision outlawing segregation in public schools. In other words, affirmative action they say is a form of discrimination. Okay. Has anyone talked about what Ginny Thomas said to the January 6th committee? No. Is there like a link you can show me, or send me, I should say, a link you can whisper me, or maybe a video? Race is also at the heart of a new challenge to provision of the Voting Rights Act. Since 2013, the court has struck down or neutered key provisions of the landmark 1965 law, and it appears poised to do so again in a case that involves allegations that Alabama engaged in racial gerrymandering to limit the influence of African American voters. Race is also central in a challenge to the 1978 Indian Child Welfare Act. Texas and a group of white adoptive parents are challenging the law because it mandates that where at all possible, indigenous children are to be adopted or fostered in indigenous homes. There are 2 huge cases. There are other 2 huge cases before the court that will garner lots of attention. One is a test of civil rights law that exists in most states, requiring that when a commercial entity offers products or services to the public, the business may not discriminate based on race, religion, national origin, or gender. Challenging these laws is Lori Smith, a web designer in Colorado, who doesn't want to make designs for same-sex couples. Oh, here we go. Oh my god. Because she asserts that it would violate her religious principles. But the Supreme Court is not hearing the challenge on the basis of Smith's claim to free exercise of religion. Instead, the court has limited the case to Smith's claim that the law violates her right to free expression. At Georgetown University's Kelsey Corcoran puts it, it is because the court has limited the argument, if Smith is correct, that there's a free speech right to selectively choose her customers based on the messages she wants to endorse. The law would also permit a white supremacist to deny services to people of color because that too would be a message of endorsement. True. Which is, we get into the non-fallacious slippery slope. And that's where shit starts getting scary. Yeah. But lastly and not certainly, the court will hear a major election law case. Oh, this is the one. Here we are. This is the one, folks. This one will determine where our democratic systems go from here. In the current case, here we go. The courts will hear a major election law case involving the so-called independent state legislator theory. In the current case, the North Carolina Supreme Court struck down a congressional redistricting plan on the grounds that it was unconstitutional, partisan gerrymandered, barred by the state constitution. The Republican leaders of the state legislature challenged the state court decision. They contend it violates Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution, which states that the time, place, and manner of congressional elections shall be prescribed in each state by the state legislature. So take a second to take in what they're arguing. They're basically saying that if a certain state legislature, if a certain party has a hold on a state legislator, then they effectively get to unilaterally decide a lot of these things, and effectively, by I guess like by domino effect, effectively get to determine what happens in the federal level, essentially, right? Because think about it. If the state legislator has essentially the sole power of determining how elections are done, what rules and what districts and whatnot, and there's no other recourse, so they can make up their own rules, and there's nothing you can do about it. Take that in for a second. They can literally make up their own rules, and there's nothing you can do about it. That argument in its most extreme form would mean that no state court, no state agency could interfere with the state legislator's version of election rules, regardless of the rules set down in the state constitution. Exactly. That's exactly what that means. Pretty scary stuff. Opponents contend that would mean the state legislators would be free to do almost anything. Yeah, there we go. Honestly, I should have just kept reading. Without any supervision by state courts and without being able to delegate to local official rules on how to run elections. While state judges across the country frequently disagree, in this case, the National Conference of Chief Justices, representing all the chief legal officers in the 50 states, has filed a brief opposing much of North Carolina's argument. State judges, they say, do have the power under the U.S. Constitution to review state election laws. Yeah, but because obviously this is being brought in by the Republican Party, of course, because they want to essentially checkmate democracy. And by the way they're going to do that is if this decision from a favorable court falls through, if it goes their way, that means that they have absolute free reign of making their laws however they want in terms of elections. In other words, they get to write the rules on how these elections are run. There's nothing that you can do, and that's it. If you and by, I guess, default or by extension, would they basically get to determine what happens at the federal level. Michael has it. We have a lot of orange in the purple state. The Supremes probably won't let it happen. What? The Supreme Court is not going to let it happen? Is that what you're saying? I don't know. Excuse me if I don't have confidence in the Supreme Court of the United States. Excuse me if I don't trust them. They said that a lot of precedent was settled law, and now I don't believe them. So, come to the conclusion of this term, we could find ourselves without very much of a democracy, right? Because effectively, it would delegate elections to states, and they can finagle without our input. They can finagle the way elections are run, and that's kind of effed, isn't it? They are political animals, maybe, but it doesn't matter. I don't know. I just don't trust them. What would this Secretary of State or State Election Department say? Well, the state legislatures would tell them what goes, essentially, right? Because the state legislators would have essentially the full authority to say, okay, well, these are the election rules. We are the state legislator, and by the power of whatever BS here, we're going to argue that you can't actually supersede that, right? That's what they're arguing. Very good, very democratic. That is one of the major cases that we need to pay attention to. This one right here. As more info on that comes out, of course, we'll report on it, or we'll talk about it. But yeah, that one, out of all the cases, I think that one's like at the top of the list, or at least one of the very top ones. Definitely one of the very top ones to be to look out for. Well, we don't have to, we can't hope for the best outcome. We have to actually do something about it. Clarence Thomas failing to note wife Guinea's $680K side income. Nice! Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas' failure to disclose more than $680,000 of his wife's income in filings over a decade ago has reemerged as she is set to meet with the House of Representatives of the January 6th committee. Lawyers and conservative activists, Ginny Thomas, was paid $686,589 by Conservative Heritage Foundation. from 2003 to 2007, but Justice Thomas did not report that income in financial disclosures for those years. Wow. And like, I wish I had this yesterday because I made like a massive case. I made like a huge, like kind of step by step as to responding to Justice Alito's apparent outrage or apparent uncomfortable fact that people are questioning the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, that are questioning the integrity of he said specifically our integrity, our, meaning the justices themselves, not the, whatever. He specifically said our, and he's referencing our, meaning justices. And like I kept pointing out, I had several articles about all of these things. This would have been the icing on the cake too. And yeah, no shit, people are questioning your integrity when shit like this comes up. People are questioning your integrity because of things like this. That's why, okay? And quite frankly, yeah, we should. Why are we finding out about this? Literally, what? 15? If we want to be generous, 15 something plus years ago? Why are we finding out just now about this? No transparency. And now that we find out about this, you think what? This is good? Alito has no integrity. No, I don't think so either. The legitimacy of the Supreme Court is absolutely to be questioned, or at the very least, the integrity of the members of the Supreme Court is absolutely to be questioned. There's reasons for that. Corruption. Lies. That's the problem here. Anyways, as the LA Times reported in 2011, Thomas had checked the box saying none in a section of his disclosures that asked for information about spousal non-investment income. And coincidentally, it was from the Heritage Foundation. Federal judges are legally required to disclose their spouse's income sources. Maybe there should be an investigation into this. The issue has resurfaced on social media as Thomas is due to speak on to the House of Representatives this week. Ginny Thomas made almost $700,000 from the far-right Heritage Foundation from 2003 to 2007. Tweeted attorney Tristan Snell on Tuesday. Clarence Thomas had filled out a standard form listing his spouse non-investment income. He put 0. Law professor Michelle Goodwin shared the 2011 article from LA Times on Twitter and tagged Common Cause, the watchdog group that initially reported on Tom's failure to disclose his wife's income from the Heritage Foundation. Retweeting Goodwin, Common Cause wrote, "We reviewed Justice Thomas's financial disclosures filings years ago and found out that he'd failed to disclose his wife's income from the Heritage Foundation. We'll keep calling out Ginny Thomas until we have an ethical Supreme Court." Right, but unfortunately, because of the nature of the way this institution has decided to conduct itself, there are no real ethical guardrails, really. It's just like, essentially, trust me, bro. That's it. That's it. If you've been here long enough, you've heard me talk about the things that essentially are indications of whether or not you have a healthy democracy, or at least can be a form of gauging where how democratic your system is. There's 3 things. Transparency. You have to know what the heck is going on. B, strong institutions, and by strong institutions, I mean whatever institutions that you have must function they must function as is. The Supreme Court is not functioning right now. There's no transparency, so you're violating one of my three pillars, I guess. There's no transparency, and the institution isn't functioning as it's supposed to. So there are massive problems here. And of course, 3 is inclusivity, which means that people need to participate in order for a democracy to work. But yeah, that's the Supreme Court is not doing right now. And clearly there are questions as to how far this goes. In 2011, Justice Thomas amended 13 years worth of disclosure reports to include details of Ginny Thomas's source of income. Okay, gotcha. It amended documents showed that she had worked for the Heritage Foundation, as well as Hillsdale College in Michigan and the House Republican leadership, among others. Newsweek has reached out to the Supreme Court for comment. Ginny Thomas's lawyer, Mark Paoletta, said that she had agreed to a voluntary meeting with the House Select Committee. As she had said from the outset, Mrs. Thomas is eager to answer the question. Yeah, we know about this. Blah, 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 blah. Thomas has also sent messages to former White House Chief of Staff about overturning the 2020 election and corresponded with 2 Republican legislators in Wisconsin, urging them to name alternative slates of electors. So she was in on this idea of like these fake electors, which again is still the most wildest thing about this whole thing. It is the fact that the Republican Party in multiple states had schemes to shoehorn alternate slates of electors. In other words, fake electors that would overturn the election. That's what they wanted to do. And yet they consistently, without stopping, in 2022, they still are maintain this beat that the election was stolen from President Trump and whatnot, because of voter fraud or election fraud or whatever. The story changes. It's conspiratorial because it's not true. The only people that actually had a plan to overturn the results of the 2020 election is the Republicans, period. This is not something that was an isolated event. This happened in coordination with several Republican state legislators and had support from federal folks too. There's nothing else to it. The Republican Party actively engaged in multiple schemes to overturn the election in multiple states. So, this is not a party that's interested in democracy. This is not a party that is particularly interested in any type of electoral process whatsoever. Fundamentally at odds with democracy, and that just can't stand. At some point, you kind of have to draw a line. To the level of, shenanigans you're willing to accept. At some point, you have to draw a line. It is unclear whether Thomas will speak to the committee on Thursday or Friday. This upcoming, I assume, right? When was this done? Sorry. The 29th was on Thursday. Oh, well, I don't know if she actually spoke to them or not. Congress will have to override the SCOTUS. I don't know, the only thing that Congress can do is write laws. Okay? The only thing that Congress can do is write laws. So, an example would be that if the Democratic Party would actually be interested in doing something, literally anything, they could put forth bills that would codify abortion protections, and if they pass it, that would just be law, right? The only way it could be struck down is if you have to prove that that particular law is unconstitutional, right? And it's very hard that once a law gets passed by the congressional way, it's very hard for that to go away. Twitter didn't say much about it. Okay, so maybe it didn't happen. Maybe they meant this Thursday, like this upcoming Thursday and Friday, or Friday. I'm not sure. I'm gonna be honest, not sure. All right. Continuing our why Republicans are garbage train. We've got two of them. We've got three articles back to back to back to back. All right. And GOP challenges Biden's student loan forgiveness plan to put debt relief in jeopardy. Tens of millions of Americans who have been celebrating the news of student loan forgiveness are now stuck in limbo as Republicans mount legal challenges to the Biden administration's plan. Like, this is two things. A, half measures, not good. And B, the Republican Party is so freaking spiteful that even when like the people get like literal crumbs, they get big mad. Big mad. That's just how spiteful these people are. The U.S. House wants a newer society, but the Senate stonewalls it. Does it though? I'm pretty sure I don't know if I can trust Nancy Pelosi with a vision of a newer society or a different society or a different form of system or a different system. It doesn't strike me as something that she would be interested in. It strikes me as something maybe a handful of progressives might want. But quite honestly, it doesn't feel that way overall. The Senate is a whole other scenario that we have to contend with. But that's a separate point. In August, President Biden announced that most federal student loan borrowers will be eligible for some forgiveness. Up to $10,000 if they didn't receive a Pell Grant, which is a type of aid available to low-income undergraduates, and pay up to $20,000 if they did. The White House has said that borrowers will be able to start applying for the relief this month and could see their lowered or eliminated balances within 6 weeks. Nice. But of course, Republicans. Super big mad that the people who applied for these things are, which are low income people, would dare get even but a crumb of help. However, those plans may now be in jeopardy. Here's what borrowers need to know. At least 3 challenges have been filed so far. In September 27, Frank Garrison, an attorney who worked for a conservative legal group, brought the first legal challenge, arguing that forgiveness would cause him personal injury in the form of a state tax bill. A state tax bill has nothing to do with the federal government, A, and B, then just don't freaking apply for the aid then. Pick up your bootstraps. Canceled student debt can be considered taxable income, although borrowers won't be required to pay federal taxes on their canceled debt, thanks to a COVID relief provision, which was also passed by the Democratic Party. Some states, including Indiana, may charge levies on the relief, of course, and most of these states, first of all, it's a handful of them only, and second of all, most of them, save 1 or 2 of that, are Democratic states, so the overwhelming majority are Republican states. So, take it up with them. Currently, Garrison is pursuing a government program that leads to tax-free debt cancellation known as public service loan forgiveness, but he says Biden's plan could now cause him to get a $1,000 state tax bill. but you just got 20,000 or 10,000 off your loan regardless. So I don't understand what the issue is here. 2 days later, September 29, 6 Republican-led states, Arkansas. Yeah, even though it would help people in red states, which are, obviously, the people who benefit most, right? Of government programs. Like, even these crumbs, even these, like, half-assed crumbs that the Biden administration tried to do, the majority would obviously benefit low-income people, and obviously, red states. That it would help people in red states. And these people are actively fighting against it. 6 Republican-led states, Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and South Carolina, filed a lawsuit to block Biden's action. The GOP state officials argued that the president doesn't have the power to issue nationwide debt relief without Congress. They're also claiming that the policy would harm private companies. What? That service some federal loans by reducing their business. Well, they can go fuck themselves. They shouldn't exist in the first place. If I were Biden, I'd go to all those red states and call out leadership. He's trying to help the people, and GOP is stopping him. Yeah, 100%. That's actually a good point. The correct move from the Biden administration would be to be nonstop on the PR, on the PR train, saying that Republicans are actively trying to stop this good thing that he's trying to do. That's basically the play. But I don't think he's even managed to do that, unfortunately. To my knowledge, maybe I'm wrong. On the same day, Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich brought his own legal challenge to stop the Biden administration plan. Brnovich asserts that the policy would reduce the impact of public service loan forgiveness program, which he says enables his office to recruit legal talent. What? The PSLF program allows those who work for the government to get their debt discharged after a decade. So wait a minute. You want to essentially you want to coerce people to work for the government? Wait, the party of small government? Wait, the party of small government? The party of don't tread on me, whatever BS, is trying to keep a method of coercion to get people to work for the government? Nice meme. Nice meme. If borrowers' loans are simply discharged, Brnovich argues they'll have a less of incentive to work for the state office. I mean, wouldn't that be a good thing? I thought you wanted less government. The memes write themselves on this one. Lawyers in private practice tend to get paid more. The main obstacle for those hoping to bring a legal challenge against the Biden plan has been finding a plaintiff who can prove that they've been harmed by the policy. Such injuries needed to be established what the courts called a standing. So there's no standing right now, said Lawrence Tribe, a Harvard law professor. Tribe isn't convinced that the current lawsuits filed have successfully done that. They keep looking for different ways to establish standing, and that's all well and good, but in the end, it is the merits that matter, and there's little merit in their challenge. Higher education and legal expert Mark Kontrowitz said it was possible a judge may overlook an imperfect case of standing. However, because of the larger question at play here, including the scope of the president's power, the president's student loan forgiveness plan will likely be overturned if it reaches the U.S. Supreme Court. Jesus. And of course, the Supreme Court being conservative. Yes, conservative. And yes, political in nature. I suppose they suspect that they will torpedo that. And in the process, shaft tens of millions of people. Nice. Cool. Whether or not these challenges are ultimately successful, they're likely to slow down the forgiveness timeline, with a federal judge deciding whether or not to grant you. Yeah, and if they can just kind of if they can slow this down and hope people forget and slow this down, to the midterms, maybe they're planning to just coast on that, because if people actually saw the relief hit their accounts, or they can log into their loans or whatever, and they can actually physically see that with their eyes, and that happens, or that starts to happen right before the midterms, oof, they can't have that. The Republican Party is doing everything they can to slow that down. With a federal judge deciding whether or not to grant the GOP-led state's request to block Biden's plan, the administration already said it will not cancel any student debt before October 17th. The policy should be tied up in the courts, could be tied up in the courts for months. If the battle over student loan forgiveness drags on, the Biden administration may decide to extend the pause on the monthly payments yet again. Currently, the bills, and if they do, it's been what, over a year or so, maybe almost 2 years, I want to say. We'll just round it up. It's been basically 2 years, and no financial company has gone under because of this. Why not just listen, all right? Since we are experiencing such an unprecedented scenario, then we will have to take unprecedented measures, and we will eliminate student debt, and that's it. That would have been the appropriate play. Currently, the bills, which have been on hold since March of 2020, over 2 years. Over 2 years. Are scheduled to resume in January, but it may be too messy to turn them back on while it's still uncertain what people owe because forgiveness remains up in the air. For now, borrowers should stay up to date with developments, and you can sign up for the website for news here about the process, including when the forgiveness applications will be live. Ideally, you'll be ready to request relief as soon as the form launches, experts say, but if you get your loans forgiven before a lawsuit possibly gets in the way, you might get to keep it. Even if the courts rule against the Biden administration, the White House did not immediately respond for a request to comment. They also need to lower tuition, or we're just going to have to do this all over again. Yeah, I mean, really, the root cause of the issue is exactly that. The cost of education is exorbitant, and it doesn't have to be. Ideally, in an ideal scenario, if I could just snap my fingers and create the ideal scenario, none of this needs to be. Student debt would be gone, and there would be essentially public education, and that's it. It would just be. All right, folks. Moving on this Republicans aren't horrible train. Marco Rubio said he'll fight against a federal relief bill that would assist the state recovery from Hurricane Ian if it has, quote, pork in it. This, of course, being hypocritical, unbelievably hypocritical, because in many instances, the Republican Party has done this exact same thing. Choo choo, that's right. Marco Rubio said on Sunday he would fight against Hurricane Ian. A Hurricane Ian relief bill if it included unrelated spending projects. Rubio said the extra spending would deter other lawmakers from voting for disaster relief. Recovery efforts are continuing with more than 1,100 people rescued as of Saturday morning. DeSantis was happy to take that FEMA money though, right? Oh yeah, 100%. These people are all about limited government, and they want small government, and the federal government should F off or whatever, and then when push comes to shove, they absolutely will take all the resources the federal government has to offer. Of course. It's like the mentality of literal children. But whatever. Sure, I will fight against it if it has pork. I will fight against it having pork in it. That's the key. meaning I'm willing to not have any. I'm willing to shaft my own constituents if it means I can own the libs. We shouldn't have that in here because it undermines the ability to come back and do this in the future. Yet he does this exact same thing. Well, his party does the exact same thing. So I don't know what he's complaining about. We can do it. It's possible without loading it with other things, because otherwise you will have people in the Senate and the House that are going to vote against disaster relief because they view the disaster relief bill as a way for other people to get their pork and pet projects done. But Republicans do this shit all the time. Biden announced on Thursday that he's authorizing disaster relief from FEMA. Hurricane Ian made landfall in Cuba before moving on to Florida and then South Carolina. With the full scope of Ian's destruction is still being assessed, losses have been predicted to fall between $28 billion and $47 billion, making it Florida's costliest storm since Hurricane Andrew in 1992. As of Saturday, about 1 million customers in Florida, 72,000 in South Carolina, and 25,000 in North Carolina remain without power. Recovery efforts are continuing with more than 1,100 people rescued. About 35 deaths reported in a single Florida county in Lee County. Officials have attributed additional deaths to Ian, but investigations unfold. No official statewide tally has been released. So far, it has been predicted to be, I think, 100, just over 100 right now. But the final tally won't be known for a while. I suspect it's going to be a lot. I suspect it's going to be a mass casualty event. Folks were not prepared. And I think that a lot of the warnings they came a little too late, and a lot of people underestimated this storm. And I think, like, it's just a prime example of, like, this isn't, these storms that are coming now, while they may be less frequent or maybe at the same frequency as, normal seasons go, the storms that we are going to experience are not your grandpappy storms. These storms are going to be much bigger and much stronger. Like, if you see a comparison between, like, the size of Hurricane Andrew and the size of Hurricane Irma, I mean, it is just wild. I'll see if I can get some comparisons here. Well, this is Hurricane Andrew. Come here. Like, just look at Hurricane Irma and look at Hurricane Andrew. Hurricane Irma seems huge. It is a mammoth in comparison. CBS says about 100 dead and warnings came too late. Yeah, exactly. I just said that. That's part of the issue here. And like I said, these aren't your grandpappy storms. I think disaster relief is something we shouldn't play with. But you're comfortable with playing politics with it. That's literally what you're doing. We're capable in this country, in the Congress, of voting for disaster relief for after key events like this, without using it as a vehicle or mechanism for people to load up with stuff that's unrelated to the storm. Okay. Left flank vets coming in hot with 122 folks. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. I'll give it a sec for folks to pile in. Folks, first of all, I guess we'll just take a little second while everybody gets in here. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to hit the follow button. It does help us out. Spread the word far and wide that this is a chill place to be. We're here Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. RCS, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. For those of you that are just joining and have never seen me before, I am a difficult truth. I do the news. I do the politics Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. This is definitely one of the chillest places to be. So make sure that you hit the follow button and do the little clicky thing so that your view gets counted. I appreciate that. And of course, if you haven't already, please consider supporting Left Flank Vets. They do awesome stuff at twitch.tv/leftflankvets, and they do awesome stuff on the Twitter, so go find them there as well. While you're at it, head on over to twitch.tv/AlioShare as well. If you find any little diamonds in the chat, just go show some support. Right now we're going over why Republicans are garbage. Squirrel Coney, thank you for the follow. So here's an example of, it's not exactly one-to-one, but here's an example of doing what you need to do. To try to get, help where you can. As we all know, Bernie Sanders was criticized or attempted to be criticized back in the day for voting on the crime bill. And he voted for this crime bill because there was a specific thing called the Violence Against Women Act. And that to him was important enough to vote for this 94 crime bill, despite how horrible it was. That specific W that exists till this day, if I remember correctly, if I'm correct, that specific W, the Violence Against Women Act, he figured that was an important vote to do. So he's just giving excuses. Marco Rubio is just giving excuses, and already trying to kind of prime the pump by saying that he's not going to vote for any for any federal relief bill, if it has anything, quote, that has any pork or anything that the excuse is that if it has anything that he doesn't like, he's more than willing to shaft the people who need it in order for that to get stopped. That's what he's telling you. That's what essentially he's telling you. Continuing this Republicans are garbage train, Dr. Oz scientific experiments killed over 300 dogs and entire litters of puppies. In a scandal that would surely make Mitt Romney, who famously strapped his family dog atop of the roof car, look like a PETA activist, a review of 75 studies published by Oz between 1989 and 2010 reveals the Republican Senate candidate research killed over 300 dogs and inflicted significant suffering on them and other animals used in experiments. Dr. Oz, a New Jersey resident who's currently running for U.S. Senate from Pennsylvania, was a principal investigator at Columbia University Institute of Comparative Medicine Lab for years and assumed full scientific, administrative, and fiscal responsibility for the conduct of his studies. Over the course of 75 studies published in academic journals reviewed by Jezebel, Oz's team conducted experiments on at least 1,027 live animal subjects that included dogs, pigs, calves, rabbits, and small rodents. 34 of these experiments resulted in the deaths of at least 329 dogs, while 2 of his experiments killed 31 pigs, 38 experiments killed 661 rabbits and rodents. They give PETA way too much credit. Yeah, well. In the early 2000s, testimony from whistleblower and veterinarian named Catherine Dell'Orto about Oz's research detailed extensive suffering inflicted on his team's canine test subjects, including multiple violations of the Animal Welfare Act, which sets minimum standard care for dogs, cats, primates, rabbits, and other animals in possession of animal dealers and laboratories. The law specifically requires research and breeders to use pain-relieving drugs or euthanasia on animals, and not use paralytics without anesthesia or experiment multiple times on the same animal. Dell'Orto testified that a dog experiment on Oz's team experienced lethargy, vomiting, paralysis, kidney failure, but wasn't euthanized for a full 2 days. She alleged other truly horrifying examples of gratuitously cruel treatment of dogs, including at least one dog who was kept alive for a month for continuing experimentation despite her unstable, painful condition, despite how data from her continued experimentation was deemed unusable. According to Dell'Orto, one Oz-led study resulted in a litter of puppies being killed by intracardiac injection with syringes of expired drug inserted into their hearts without any sedation. Upon being killed, the puppies were allegedly left in a garbage bag with living puppies who were their litter mates. Dell'Orto's allegations made in 2003 and 2004 are detailed in letters from PETA to University and USDA. In an interview with Billy Penn last month, she acknowledged PETA is not a reliable source of information, but said that the organization's letter honestly reflected what she told the organization and provided documentation for. So she's basically confirming what PETA alleged. That's what she's saying. Unable to listen to animal torture, it's really bad. It's really bad. It's really bad. And this is a psychopath that's running for Senate. On the Republican side, of course. In May of 2004, Columbia University was offered by the USDA to pay a $2,000 penalty for violations of the Animal Welfare Act. So, they ended up paying a fine based on the findings of the internal investigation. The USDA accepted these findings, but according to Dell'Orto, the review was faulty and had investigators on the committee that were complicit in this type of poorly designed, cruel animal experimentation. Dell'Orto noted that while Oz wasn't the only one who euthanized dogs and puppies himself, when your name is on the experiment and the way the experiment is designed inflicts so much cruelty to these animals, that's by design, that's a problem. Months after paying this $2,000 fine, Columbia defended Dr. Oz amid the animal abuse allegations, calling him a highly respected researcher and clinician who adhered to the highest standard of animal care, but neglected to deny any of the specific allegations. Yeah, because they can't. Public Affairs, as well as Oz's Senate campaign, declined for comment, and Oz's campaign has yet to respond. Notably, in April this year, the Daily Beast reported that the university has seemingly cut ties with Dr. Oz, stripping of his personal pages from the medical center's website. Interesting. Oz formerly held senior positions, including vice chair of surgery and director of integrated medicine at the medical center. Yeah. So this is who he is. He's an absolute psychopath. Where's John Wick when you need him? True. Absolutely abhorrent. And this guy's running for Senate, folks. This guy's running for Senate. This guy is actually running for Senate. Deviant Geek, thank you for the follow. Could Oz really lose? Yeah, he could. He could. He could lose. He could lose. But, you know, that's up to the people of Pennsylvania. Fetterman does have a good lead. That's good. Absolutely disgusting. What an abhorrent human being. Anyone who, like, even, like, participates or, like, indulges in the idea of, like, animal experimentation tells me everything I need to know. Poor puppies, yep. Puppies, rabbits, calves. Anyone who's, like, completely comfortable with engaging in this behavior, or even bankrolling it, or even being at the head of the research or whatever, tells me everything I need to know about them. Absolutely disgusting human being. Yep. And that's who the Republican Party decided, like, hey, yeah, that guy should be our guy. That guy should be our guy. Peter will tell you what the vast majority of people do. We all drink milk, we all use shampoo, and we take medicines and we wear makeup. Yeah, but there are ways of doing it without the necessity of, like, animal testing, right? And, like, as far as, like, PETA's role goes in this story, it's very minimal. The person who blew the whistle on this, all she said was that, well, you know, whatever PETA's reputation may be, in this case, they accurately represented what I said. So, like, you know, that's, like, the most minimal part of the story. I truly think we're super close to totally stopping animal testing and just use virtual humans to test drugs. That would be ideal. Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. And, like, you can try your best wherever possible and in as many ways as possible to make sure that you can look. You know, if you are the type of person that uses makeup, you know, you can see the label or you would hope that the label would say not animal tested, and so it is. That oftentimes just use drugs on cadavers. Huh? I didn't know that. The same goes for, like, shampoos, right? You try to do what you can. Like, especially with things like shampoos or, like, medicine or, like, makeup. Oh, well, you know, things like that. I think, especially when it comes to makeup and shampoo and whatnot, we don't need to do animal testing. Like, it should be outlawed. And if you want to test drugs, well, find volunteers, my friends.
I was on a family trip to England recently, during which time...
Folks, if you guys have a moment, consider checking out this channel. She does fantastic work as a climate reporter. I got my family to stop using Nuskin, who uses RNA from umbilical cords. Jeez.
The Queen died. That was a very interesting time to go, but that's actually not what we're talking about today. Today, we are going to talk about a particular attraction that I got to see towards the end of its construction phase called the Sea Monster. Hey y'all, it's Becky here from the Beckosphere, where we talk about climate news and solutions. And today we're going to talk about this really cool attraction called the Sea Monster, which is one of the UK's largest art installations located on Weston-super-Mare, right along the beach. It was created by a Leeds-based creative studio called New Substance with the help of several scientists and engineers.
I was watching her today, but had to cut her stream short. Oh, so that's what happened. Due to some tech issues, felt quite bad as I went away from the PC, and when I came back, she was gone. Yeah, same. That's exactly what happened. I just figured she did a short stream, but yeah, that's on me. I didn't know.
Like Climate YouTube's very own Dr. Gibbs, and it was made as part of the creativity event Unboxed, which features 10 new ideas shaped around science, technology, engineering, art, and math topics in the UK. The project was also supported by the North Somerset Council. The Sea Monster is designed to talk about creative and artistic forms of clean energy and methods of recycling fossil fuel infrastructure. It's actually made from a retired oil rig from the North Sea that was brought to land and converted into this amazing art piece, which is the first time that an internationally based oil rig was brought somewhere for a different purpose. So naturally, I was super excited to check out this project after hearing about it back in May. While I did get there a week before it actually opened, I was able to view it under construction. To head to the viewing platform, you go through a cafe into this space that shows the history of Weston-super-Mare's extreme tide. Weston is actually very aware of sea level rise and the power of the sea because it features the second largest tidal difference in the world, with its one tidal range being a 15-meter difference. The only place that beats this is on the coast of Canada. I think it's on the Atlantic coast. There have been several destructive tidal events in the coastal town's history, with the most recent one being in 1981. That event knocked out several buildings and brought sewage up to the streets. Luckily, no one died. So there was a lot of homage to this particular flooding event in the exhibit you walk through before you get to see the Sea Monster. There's also some examples of recycled fashion, interviews with people talking about climate change, and even a place where you can stick your own ideas on the wall. After taking some time to view the construction process, I got to talk to Antonia Grammens, an event director and consultant at New Substance, to learn more about the Sea Monster. This is what she had to say.
So way back when, a few years ago, we were approached by Unboxed to come up with an open, optimistic, original idea that would celebrate UK creativity. And it was Patrick, the founder and creative director of New Substance, that came up with the idea of reuse and how can we reuse structures, be those environmental, industrial, physical structures that are no longer used. And he was sort of thinking about platforms for change and how these conversations could be had.
That's pretty cool.
And the thinking was that what better platform to have a conversation than one of the biggest platforms in the world, which are oil and gas platforms. So that's how the crazy idea started. And then it was just a matter of trying to sort of lock down a platform and speak with those in the energy and oil and gas authorities and industries to see if they would let us embark upon this project. So that was more than a couple of years ago now, and now it's here and we've started. I think the most difficult aspect of the project was getting it to move over waters to the UK, because there currently isn't a rule book or a blueprint for doing this. It's a world first in terms of the ability to move a platform across waters into another country, into the UK, and reimagine it as an art installation. So every time we approached a local authority and a national authority and governments, everyone told us it was possible and they backed us and they were excited about it, but no one could tell us how to do it. So in effect, we've completely written a new rule book of how these structures can be reused, how they can be transported and the still work reused and reimagined into something amazing.
That would be interesting. if like
Western
the old
seagulls.
oil
To add
oil
just a bit
rigs
of
were just
atmosphere.
repurposed.
We're on the coast, can confirm.
Exactly. We are on the UK coastline. So yeah, it was the first time that anyone had ever sort of broached this kind of reuse. So I think that was the difficult thing, but the wonderful thing now is that we now have a blueprint for how this can be done, and we hope that there'll be future reuse projects that can learn from everything that we've done, and provide a footprint for things going forward. There's an incredible amount to see on each floor. On the ground floor we have the pool and the 10-meter high waterfall. As you work your way up to the cellar deck, we have an amazing experiment.
That is pretty
cloud
freaking fascinating.
formation. And then on the garden lab is where we have our overgrown wild garden. It's where our renewable energies, the wind nest, the solar tree, our stepping stones will be there as well, and you'll be able to see our amazing crane from there, which is the original crane from the platform. And then you'll make your way to the top, which will be our heli deck. That has our amphitheatre. It's a real kind of contemplation space. We have the telescopes where you'll be able to see out to Wales and afar. But there's just so much to see on it. We have some incredible hosts as well, that know all about the platform, the process, Scene Monster, everything it embodies and all of our values, and they'll be there to help people and really bring it to life. We have a whole host of renewable energies happening on the platform. We have been working with Land Arc Generator Initiative, who are an incredible design but science-led sort of renewable energy brand. They have hired the likes of Trevor Lee, and they're one of our main contacts, and he has designed an incredible piece called Wind Nest, which harnesses the wind and creates renewable energy. We've also got the solar tree, which was designed by our company New Substance, which takes obviously the sun and will harness that energy and reuse it. We've also got wind sculptures as well that are worked on by our collaborators, Ivan Black, who is one of our, he's a kinetic sculptor and one of our board members. And even from the kind of waterfall as well, that entire, the way that that's powered, the water is completely reused. So we've
Nice.
got a lot of different renewable energies happening on the platform, and the idea is that people will be seeing renewables in a different light and more of a design-led light. So everyone's seen a wind turbine, you know, everyone's seen solar panels, but people haven't seen wind nests, they haven't seen solar trees. So it really provides us with an opportunity for us to showcase these science-led but also design-led incredible installations. So the whole premise of Unboxed and Scene Monster, as part of the Unboxed commissions, is what happens when the world of science, technology, engineering and maths meets the world of art and design. So predominantly schools, anyone in education, and just our government and everybody sort of talks about science, tech, engineering and maths. But I think what this project aims to do, and what Unboxed really wanted to show at the forefront of our thinking going forward, is when you bring art and design in that space, what can happen. So when you look at the oil and gas industry and the fact that the energy industry is moving so much towards renewables and cleaner, greener energy, when you actually bring
I
art
hope
and
so.
design into that field, which is predominantly a very maths, engineering, science industry, you can bring those sort of the creative thinkers into it and create something like we have done. And it only takes when those worlds come together that you can create something like Scene Monster. So I've been on the project for over a year and a half, have seen it come to fruition, have been through the very highs and the very challenging lows, but it's been incredible. It's been one of the most amazing and the biggest things I've ever worked on. Being a world first, it's come with its challenges, but we really do hope that people look at this and go away and think about how exciting renewable energies can look, how thought-provoking they can be, how the Great British Weather can play a part in that, and be harnessed and talked about and be this joyous thing that we all, us Brits, love so much, but also how structures can be reused in the future, not just these platforms, but how can we rethink industrial structures, and how they can play a part in our greener future.
If you are in the UK, I highly recommend checking out this neat project and others that are part of the Unboxed event. Links will be available in the description box below. The Sea Monster will be open from September 24th until November 5th, and it is free to check out. So you really have no excuse not to. Until next time, remember to talk about the climate crisis every single day and to support your local news organizations. Thank you so much to the people on Patreon who help support me and my fur baby Rue.
Ha! Cute. Yeah, consider subscribing to that channel. Pretty good. Pretty good stuff. Alright, folks, we've got, let me see here. That Patreon list is way too short. Drew! Very true. Very true. We need more Patreons. We need more subs. What is this? Ex-GOP strategist slams Trump for assassination instructions against McConnell? What? Is this real? Is this legit? Conservative pundit Scott Jennings said every Republican should be able to disavow former President Trump's assassination instructions against Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Jennings, a former GOP advisor and McConnell's aide, was referring to a Truth Social post from October 1st in which Trump escalated his long-standing feud with the Kentucky senator. Trump accused McConnell of opposing him because he has a death wish. The latest salvo from ongoing feud between Trump and McConnell, the former president posted on what appeared to be a death threat against the Kentucky senator on Friday. Can we get, like... Okay, here we go. This is his actual post. Is McConnell approving all these trillions of dollars worth of Democrat-sponsored bills without even the slightest bit of negotiation because he hates Donald Trump and he knows that I'm strongly opposed to them, or is he doing it because he believes in the fake and highly destructive Green New Deal? Okay, this dude's completely lost it because when has the Green New Deal been up for funding? Or when has the Green New Deal been up for a vote? What is this? What is he talking about? And is willing to take the country down with him in any event. Either reason is unacceptable. He has a, quote, death wish. Oh my god. He must immediately seek help and advice from his China-loving wife, Coco Chow. Oh my god. That seems a bit racially charged. Trump didn't specify which bill he was criticizing McConnell for, and it's unclear why he suggested the senators support the Green New Deal, even though the bill died in 2019. What is he talking about? This was literally a couple days ago. And he writes Death Wish in all caps. Like, is that a thinly veiled like threat that if you don't support me, like you have a death wish, meaning like whatever. Our TV screen documentary about Drax Power Station now burning wood pallets instead of coal. It gets huge green subsidies, puts out more CO2 in its logging virgin forests in North America for the wood. Yeah, that's horrible. That's horrible. I've seen multiple instances of that around. It happens here too in the States, where for some weird reason burning like wood pellets and stuff like that gets like green subsidies. That's a problem here too. Completely greenwashed. Yeah, that's horrible. Trump also, levied a racially charged insult at McConnell's wife, Elaine Chao, calling her McConnell's China-loving wife, Coco Chow. What does that even mean? Whatever. This dude's off his rocker and he's racist. So yeah, checks out. It checks out. Trump's salvo came after McConnell voiced support for changing the way Congress counts electoral votes. Ah, that's why he's triggered. That's why he's triggered. I don't think that post contained assassination instructions, but it did contain blatant racism against Chow. You could make arguments that post contained like stochastic terrorism, because Donald Trump is a stochastic terrorist, no doubt about it. But I see why he's triggered. Okay, these headlines, I swear to God, sometimes like these mainstream media headlines, like assassination instructions. No. You could say that he was doing a stochastic terrorism. You can say that absolutely he was doing like blatant racism. But yeah, I see what the problem is. So Mitch McConnell showed some support for a bill that would make it, harder for people to for the Congress to essentially. The point of the bill is that, like, once you start counting the electoral votes, it's streamlined, whatever. It is what it is. Less chance for shenanigans. And of course, he doesn't like that because he wants to be able to continue to do that, and he wants to be able to try again in 2024. I mean, if you read the whole thing out loud and you were on the street and you heard somebody muttering that on a street corner, you wouldn't say, let's hand this person the presidency or the Republican nomination for president. True, but that I mean, the same thing, because like could have been said for 2015, right? They claim it's carbon neutral despite clean forests that are 100 years old that won't regrow. True. Not only that, those old forests are ways of retaining carbon, and you're just eliminating that. In order for you to even get close to that, again, would require hundreds of years, which we don't have. Yes, you're correct. Anyways, this headline caught my attention, but yeah. This dude needs professional help. Like, no joke. No joke, no exaggeration. This dude needs to seek, like, professional help. Unreal. Okay. For a second there, I thought I caught, like, a headline, but no. Weirdly, Alec Baldwin was mocking Trump on SNL. Trump made his China-loving wife the Secretary of Transportation. Correct. Because then Mitch McConnell was following in line, but the moment he deviated from that by making it more secure, the electoral process like more streamlined, he got triggered. That's what it is. Continuing the Republicans are horrible human beings, Matt Gaetz asked for Florida hurricane aid after voting against continuing resolution with FEMA funding. Ha! Matt Gaetz says he wants Congress to approve additional funds to help his state recover from Hurricane Ian after voting against government funding measure last week that freed up to $18.8 billion in federal disaster aid. Gaetz joined 15 other Florida lawmakers in voting against a continuing resolution which allows the government to remain funded for the next current spending level through mid-December and includes a new round of funding for Ukraine as well as disaster aid. Well, I don't agree with like the billions to Ukraine, but we absolutely need disaster relief. President Biden signed the bill into law hours before a government shutdown deadline. The spending measure freed up federal dollars for FEMA, which is used to support recovery from major disasters and emergencies that overwhelm state resources. Gaetz said on his podcast on Friday, criticized Democrats for pushing the stopgap measure through the House without going through the committee process, also saying that he wanted to strengthen work requirements for entitlement programs. Yeah, go fuck yourself. They don't want you to be able to amend what's part of the deal that enriches them at the expense of the people in this country, and we have to do better. Go fuck yourself. We as Republicans have to be willing to grind this corrupt place to a halt if necessary to deliver wins for our people. That means up to and including shafting your state Secretary of Transportation because her family is in shipping. Ah, yes. Gaetz spokesman deferred to the lawmakers' comment on the podcast. The Florida Republican then tweeted on Sunday, "Dear Congress, on behalf of my fellow Florida man in grave need of assistance, just send us like half what you sent to Ukraine." Okay, but you literally were willing to block money that was designed to bolster funds to FEMA. What an absolute horrible human being. All right, folks. We did it. We made it through all the headlines. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Thank you so much to everybody who's here. If you guys enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit the follow button. It really does help us out. We are here Monday through Thursday. Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We're here on Sundays for Sunday Fun Days. Usually we have the co-host on. So make sure you stick around for that. And spread the word far and wide that this is one of the chillest places to be for the news, for the politics. I appreciate you guys hanging out. I appreciate all the new follows. If you guys enjoy the content, don't forget to hit the follow button on your way out. It really does help us out. Spread the word. As always, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. We love you all, and we hope to see you guys. Oh, wait. Also, before I go, special thanks to Left Flank Vets for dropping off the wonderful folks, the wonderful community of Left Flank Vets. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. You guys are awesome. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you to everybody. Thank you for all the new follows. Thank you for the support, the biddies, the subs, all that. Thank you guys. You guys are what makes us go. As I was saying, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. See ya. Appreciate that. SV Harkin, appreciate you stopping by. Thank you, Alio, Simulacra, James Napper Tandy, Miraculous Inachu, Bipedal Meatbag. Thank you guys, appreciate that. Michael Hassler, thank you. Hang tight, folks. Hang tight, folks. Don't go anywhere. We're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See ya.